Hello everyone, it's the first Saturday of the month, which means you were probably expecting me to share what else I saw in May, but today is only the first, and I can't turn around that quickly. So instead, we're doing this, which is fine because I did spend most of my Friday and Sunday nights watching this. These are my thoughts on a TV show called Jericho, which aired on CBS from 2006 to 2008. It ran for 2 seasons, 30 episodes in total, each about 45 minutes long. It starred Skeet Ulrich, Lenny James, and Gerald McRaney. When a nuclear mushroom cloud is spied on the horizon near Denver, the inhabitants of the small town of Jericho, Kansas, must scramble to cope with the aftermath, not knowing what's happened to the rest of the country and the world. The show was rated TV-14, so it's pretty clean. There's some light to moderate language, but no major 4-letter words. There's no explicit sexual content. There is violence, but it's never excessive, bloody, or gory. It's a relatively tame show, something I wasn't ever embarrassed to be watching with my mom and dad. Based on the premise, it probably sounds like this belongs in the nuclear apocalypse genre, but that conjures a set of expectations, and that's not really what this is. There's fallout, and there's also an EMP attack, but while the nuke, or nukes, is the catalyst, the story doesn't revolve around the blast itself. This isn't a show about people getting radiation sickness and dying off. It's more about this remote community trying to prevent complete societal breakdown as it deals with food shortages, fire, crime, illness, refugees, and bad people trying to take over. For a while there, I thought it had some rough patches. It starts off strong, with a bang, you might say, and it ends strong, but the middle has its ups and downs. In particular, there were things that kept bothering me in the first half of the first season. I was disappointed at how quickly the story would move on from certain issues. There were things I assumed would be long-term problems that seemed to take a back seat after the initial crisis. Everybody looks way too fresh. Clothes are neat, hair is cut and perfectly styled, men are clean-shaven, not that that's something I'm complaining about, but a few weeks after a nuke and an EMP, I would expect most people to look a little shaggy, a little rundown, and I highly doubt women would be bothering to put makeup on every day. It was also a little corny and a little cliche at times. The resolutions for some of the conflicts were a little too tidy and pat. There was some cheesy writing and cheesy acting from minor characters. The music was heavy-handed. It felt kind of dated. So there was this period in the first half where I wasn't totally feeling it. And then I changed my mind. I was going to say it was a gradual thing, but there are actually a couple moments I can cite where I started to become more appreciative, and I could feel my response changing. The plot started throwing in more surprises as the writers explored a variety of scenarios and got creative with the storytelling. And some things that I thought had been taken care of too easily, too quickly, too conveniently before ended up being revisited, and that was satisfying. In the first half of Season 1, they're dealing with issues as they arise. Each episode has a problem that is resolved at the end of it. The second half has a more continuous plot, an ongoing issue that gets bigger and bigger and isn't resolved by the end. More of a focus on cliffhangers instead of, let's have a happy moment at the end of this. And that makes you want to keep watching one episode after another. I liked how characters changed and developed. There are people you're behind 100%, and there are others who take time, lots of time in some cases, a very large amount of time in one case, to grow on you. There was one character that I disliked from the start, and then I absolutely hated. And then suddenly I was like, oh no, do I feel sorry for this person? He just had this arc and he redeemed himself, and then I was like, okay, he's a good guy. Fine. There's one character who's on the wrong side of things 98% of the time, and he's super obnoxious about it. But by the end, I felt like he's okay. And there's another character who is definitely not a good guy, but he keeps saving their butts in the nick of time, and I just couldn't help kind of liking him. The show has a couple very moving death scenes, and those helped pull me in and make me feel closer to the characters, but it also has some moments that made me laugh, and I like that balance. It seemed to get better as it went on. Skeet Ulrich leads the ensemble cast as the mayor's younger son, the black sheep of the family who got into trouble and ran off years ago. He's dropped into town for a quick visit, and he's on his way out again when the bomb goes off and he gets stuck in Jericho. Though many locals don't trust him, he's a right place at the right time guy. He's a jack of all trades who ends up coming to his thankless hometown's rescue over and over again. The more this happened, the more I rolled my eyes, and I started to joke that he was like Lassie. Oh no, this happened. Get Jake Green. Oh no, we're having this problem. Help us, Jake. But then there's this town meeting scene where they're discussing sending someone to visit a place that might be dangerous, and they ask for volunteers. And sure enough, everybody turns to look at Jake, who's standing in the back of the room just minding his own business. And slowly he realizes they're all looking at him, and this alarmed expression comes over his face like, and it was hilarious. Not just because of his perfect reaction, but because the show was acknowledging that it was ridiculous and revealing its self-awareness. I was also really tickled by a scene where Gerald McRaney, who plays the mayor and Jake's father, is told a crazy piece of information that under normal circumstances would demand explanation. But he hears this revelation and is just like, sounds good, and turns to leave. And Jake is like, is that all you have to say? And I can't repeat the mayor's answer because it's got a spoiler, but he's like, we're about to do this. Nothing surprises me anymore. And the delivery is perfect. It is just such a good encapsulation of everything that was going on. Season 1 ends with a whopper of a cliffhanger, but thankfully Season 2 picks up where it left off. You should know, though, that Season 2 only has 7 episodes. Here's what happened. Due to low ratings, CBS canceled the show after its first season. But the people who liked it really liked it and launched a passionate campaign to bring it back. And their efforts were rewarded. CBS brought the show back for an abbreviated second season to allow the cast and crew to bring the story to a close. And then it got canceled again, because the numbers just weren't there, the ratings still weren't high enough to keep spending money on it. It's a bummer, but it's pretty amazing that they resurrected it even once. Going in, I knew the second season was much shorter, but I didn't know the circumstances, so I was worried. Was the show gonna just cut off midstream and make us feel like we'd wasted all that time? I kept thinking about this show we watched years ago titled Invasion. It's got William Fichtner in it. It's set in Florida, where a bunch of people get abducted by aliens during a hurricane. It started out good, and then it got kind of lame and stupid, but then it began to get better, and it was getting really good, and then it was canceled. We were watching it on DVD, and we didn't know that, so we were left with this huge cliffhanger and this feeling of disappointment and rage, because just when it had finally hit its stride and started getting awesome, And that was in the back of my mind the whole time I was watching Jericho, and I was really hoping it wouldn't have the same lack of resolution. So I was very pleased when it turned out they managed to wrap everything up within 7 episodes. It was pretty amazing because they cram a lot of stuff in. I thought for sure there would be loose ends, it would feel rushed, or it wouldn't make sense, but they actually did a good job being concise while making sure it flowed, and it flowed with the first season. In a way, it might be better for having tightened things up. There were a few characters who didn't have much to do, and I think if the second season had been 2 or 3 times as long, they would have had a more significant role, they would have had some subplots. But I was glad that the story didn't get bogged down with filler and redundant drama. I kind of feel like it was better for the pruning. But take that with a grain of salt, because I am someone who doesn't watch much TV. When I do watch TV, when I do watch a show, I do feel like there's so much repetition and so many things that are just dragged out and it's tedious. I much prefer films over television. There was talk of making a movie afterward, and then there was an attempt to get a 3rd season off the ground, but it didn't pan out. There is room for more story, but I'm okay with how it ended. Even though there were some little things that seemed to drop off between 1 and 2, I was satisfied. Season 2 expands the big picture, and it's convincing, maybe a little cliche, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the storyline. I liked where it took us, and it was suspenseful, and it introduces Isai Morales to the main cast, and his character was a very good addition. So, though I was iffy at times for a while there, earlier on, I ended up really liking the show. I do think if it aired today, it would be divisive. It's not a political show, but characters have a traditional sense of patriotism and love of country that won't appeal to some viewers. If you poo-poo that sentiment, chances are this wouldn't be your cup of tea. There were 2 things in the very last episode that made me say, oh, I know some people who would hate this. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Jericho. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this show, but if you have seen it, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Next week, I'll tell you all about what else I saw in May. Thanks for watching.